Behind! Let's go, huh? Let's go.
And welcome, everyone, to another episode of Bolts and Colts. This is Brian Latendry here with Brian Riley. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. What's up, Brian?
The show's coming in hot this week. We're recording on a Saturday, and obviously tomorrow our slate of games that we care about is kicking off. So we have a lot to talk about this week. There's going to be kids running around in the background. I got kids playing outside in the driveway, playing basketball, but we could not record this week after the bounce back week that the Colts had and the surprisingly exciting week that the Chargers had this week. So I don't know who I want to talk about first, because last week
start with the Chargers. Start with the Chargers. I want you to start with the Chargers.
Let's start with the Chargers. First, let's start with the Twilight Zone episode that unfolded on the sidelines before that game began, because we were all told at the beginning of the season that Justin Herbert was not going to be starting, and we figured maybe if the season got away from the Chargers and they had a really poor record going into the last, several games of the year, maybe he gets the start. If Tyrod really fell flat on his face, maybe Herbert gets a few starts here or there. No one expected that between the time that the coin toss happened and the first kickoff, between the coin toss and kickoff, basically, Justin Herbert finds out that he is going to be the starter in this game because Tyrod Taylor was given an injection because he had a rib injury. He was given an injection right before the game by the Chargers team doctor that accidentally punctured his lung. And so the crazy thing was, the Chargers are never on TV here. And here I was watching the game because they happened to be the national game even out here on the East Coast. And you see Tyrod Taylor at the beginning of the game, sitting on the bench with the Chargers medical staff around him, looking very concerned, very upset. And then all of a sudden you see Justin Herbert trotting out onto the field as the starting quarterback. And it wasn't until later that we found out what the true situation was that had happened. We just heard that all of a sudden, Tyrod wasn't able to go and Justin Herbert comes out. Having found out later that this was actually essentially an error by the medical staff, this kind of thing only happens to the Chargers. What did you think when you heard that?
Listen, I've seen some crazy shit. And this tops them, man. I have never seen anything like this. Now,
it's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. And I don't know what happened, and I don't even know what the injection was for. But I know things happen for a reason.
To my understanding, it was like a Novocaine adjacent drug. I forget the name of it, but it's like a something cane. And basically, I had read that it has to be done close to game time because it is the type of numbing agent that will wear off. So it's not something you can get the day before or a couple days before. And there is always a risk during these types of injections of like a lung puncture or something like that. But that just leads me to the question of, so I guess the thing is, because the NFLPA, my understanding, is investigating this, and who knows if this is a situation where Tyrod's got quite a case against the Chargers medical staff, a medical staff that has a poor history over the past several years of managing injuries that could be career threatening for players and stuff like that. So this was like another chapter in the saga of what is up with the Chargers medical staff. My understanding is when they do these types of injections, they actually tell the player, these are the risks involved. Do you still want us to go ahead and do this? Obviously, the players are going to say yes, especially, and here's where I feel awful. You're talking about a guy who worked his ass off in training camp. You're talking about a guy who finally had his chance to step up and be the Chargers starter. This was his team. Anthony Lynn made it very clear at the beginning of the season that they were putting their faith in Tyrod Taylor. They had a lot of confidence in him, especially as a guy who can execute out on the field, does not turn the ball over. We saw that in week one. It wasn't a fun game to watch, but he didn't turn the ball over, and he got, that's kind of what was the big selling point about Tyrod. So having this kind of taken away from him, and we don't know how long he's going to be out. This could be a few weeks recovery. This could be a season-ending sort of situation. This could be a career-threatening sort of situation. So I feel awful for him and all the work he put in and how this opportunity was taken away from him. before we even start to talk about Justin Herbert, just that. I mean, you're a quarterback, dude. You don't ever want to lose your job to injury.
You don't. But I know when Tyrod Taylor's sitting on that sideline and he's watching how Justin Herbert performed, he's got to know this is not his team anymore. The Chargers are not Tyrod Taylor's team anymore, and it's unfortunate because what happened to him, it was a medical accident. It wasn't anything about performance, but the way Justin Herbert played, there's no way you go back to Tyrod Taylor. I think he proved himself. His team rallied around him, and he almost beat the Chiefs. Tyrod Taylor would not have given that team that performance on Sunday.
Well, and let's dive into that a little bit. So the first series that he comes out, they go 79 yards, and he runs it in for a touchdown. I don't think you get much more of a storybook opening than what he got there, and he looked good doing it. I mean, that, and I remember there's actually a clip of him coming to the sideline after that period of time, and one of the coaches says to him, like, hey, how much fun was that out there? And he said something to the effect of, like, that was the coolest 15 minutes of my entire life, like that opening drive, right? And so just like being able to watch that and having, being fortunate enough to have the game be on here at that particular time and watch that, I can honestly tell you, like, I got chills watching it because I had not I can't. It's not since like the early days of Breeze or the early days of Phillip Rivers of like watching. I got to watch this kid start his career with the Chargers and really just nail that opening chapter, man. Like really just his poise was there. He was unafraid. It looked like they had, a good amount of that playbook open for him kind of right from the get-go. And he looked good doing it. So he comes off the field, and they're 7-0 up on the Super Bowl champs. And he just found out 5 minutes before kickoff that he's starting.
Yeah. I mean, I think you nailed it with he was not afraid. He didn't look afraid. He didn't look like he was a rookie. He threw one bad ball, the pick, but like that's going to happen. But he also threw a couple balls where I was just like, there's not a lot of quarterbacks that can make that ball. Like that touchdown in the corner of the end zone, not a lot of quarterbacks, maybe 3 quarterbacks make that throw. That was beautiful. It was perfect.
That was the one that got him to 14 points, right? It was the one where he threw that to the back corner of the end zone, and he again put that in a place where only the receiver is going to be able to get it. To me, the pass of the game is 100%. The pass Keenan Allen.
Throw, when he dropped it in, beautiful.
Oh my God, dude! Yep. Like, first of all, just over one defender, under one defender, right in Keenan's hand. And of course, Keenan being a fantastic receiver, makes that catch at that particular point. The other thing too that I love about the Chargers receivers, again, you're talking about Mike Williams, you're talking about Keenan Allen, and you're talking about Austin Eckler, who's one of the best pass catching backs in the entire NFL, if not the best pass catching back in the entire NFL. These guys can make up for less than stellar throws. There was a catch that Keenan Allen made that was like over the back of a defender that was totally saved, kind of like a not great throw by Herbert. I thought the catch that Austin Eckler made right down by the end zone where he caught a ball that was a little bit short and kind of dove on the ground and made that catch. And then, so there's a couple of plays where maybe the ball wasn't perfect, but the receivers are good enough to make those types of adjustments, which I really like to see. There was so many plays where he put the ball right in stride, exactly where he wanted to hit the receiver so that they could do something with it after the catch. And I think that is, and listening to Tony Romo call that game, who obviously is a guy who knows, and he's super insightful. I really love listening to Romo call a game, but he was picking up on all of those things, and he would point those things out of like, look at where he put that ball, look at where the receiver caught that ball, look at what he allowed him to do sort of after the catch. And so that was what was getting me fired up, is not just the fact that, we're getting first downs, we're moving the ball, the touchdowns and stuff like that, but it was looking at this kid's poise in the pocket, looking at this kid being able to extend plays with his feet, and then watching some of the throws that he made and where he was putting the ball. The rookie mistake stuff, I'm not even mad at, dude. Like the play where he threw the interception, that was a Phillip Rivers play right there, man, if I've ever seen one. Like he put his Phillip Rivers gunslinger, because he was obviously feeling it at that time. And that's where I kind of couldn't blame him. He's like, he was feeling it, dude. He had a good game up to that point. He was moving the ball. He was making all the throws. He could have easily run for the first down, and it clearly didn't. either didn't realize it at the time or just his eyes got real wide when he thought he could make a throw that was just an ill-advised throw. And he threw it into double, almost triple coverage. And it ends up getting picked off. And now, granted, to that point, the receivers had been making great catches. He'd been threading the needle on some of those plays. He was feeling it. He made a bad play. People look at that much like they looked at Phillip Rivers in the first week and said, well, did that turn into points and he lost the game? Yeah, but you know what? The freaking defense let them go all the way down the field and score off of that. He didn't throw that on his own 5-yard line. He threw that on the freaking, Chiefs 5-yard line. And so I don't want to hear that, dude. Like, and I think overall, I mean, everybody that I've seen and read about talked about his game. Like, he threw for over 300 yards. He ran for a touchdown. He passed for a touchdown. He made a couple of rookie mistakes. There was that one. There was the one on the 3rd and goal where he turned to the wrong side for the handoff. There was a miscommunication on the play. But even that series, like, to me, there was some questionable coaching decisions that cost the Chargers that game. One of them was when they were down on the goal line, running the ball right up the middle twice. Stupid and very predictable and very vanilla Chargers offense after you'd been moving the ball so great. So then they get to 3rd down, and of course a miscue on 3rd down kills them. And at that point they wasted 2 plays before they got there. And then of course the punting in overtime. Punting the ball over. You can't punt it to the freaking Chiefs in overtime and put the ball in Mahomes' hands on a defense that had already started to break down in the 4th quarter, right? Because I would say and I watched this film again yesterday. I watched the game again yesterday. For 3 quarters, the Chargers played really good football against the Chiefs. And I would say in the first half, they played a damn near perfect half against the Chiefs. But that they started to wear down, and then punting the ball to them in overtime, dude, like, you just can't do it. You cannot do it. And that, to me, cost them the game. I would rather have had them go for it on 4th down and not get it.
You have nothing to lose. You had nothing to lose. You had a rookie quarterback. You shouldn't have been where you were at. Go ahead, Bri.
No, I was just saying 8.5-point underdog. Like, no one's thinking they're going to win this game. It's the kid's first start ever. Like, give them a chance to win it.
You go for the win every time. You go for the win, because then obviously you saw what happened, and this was one of the most impressive things that I've ever seen was when the kicker, kicked 3 55+ yard field goals in a row.
Right.
And you knew that was going to happen. Like, you knew that was going to happen. You don't punt there. But again, if I'm a Chargers fan, Bri, like, I'm excited for this team. Like, these guys played great. Your defensive line played phenomenal. They punched the Chiefs in the face. I think they run out of gas. Maybe not so deep, but they played tough, man. They should have won that game. They should have won that game.
Tillery had a great game for them. Obviously, Bosa and Ingram, although Ingram, I believe, is on the injury report this week with a knee, if I'm not mistaken. But you look at some of the stats from this game, you've got what stood out to me on the defensive line was Linval Joseph, who was a guy they brought in this year to really put pressure on up the middle. And you saw that in this game. You saw him clogging up the running lanes, but you also saw the pressure that he was getting, that push up the middle, which just made it easier for Bosa and Ingram on the edges to really get after Mahomes. And Mahomes was frustrated and flustered for a good chunk of that game. And it's just like with that offense that they have, you're only going to keep them down for so long. And it was in my mind, this is where you have Anthony Lynn and that coaching staff. Sometimes they're playing not to lose. And when you're against the Super Bowl champions, when you're playing against a high-powered offense like that, to expect your defense to shut that down for an entire 4 quarters and then overtime as well, it's just too much to ask, dude. Like, I feel bad for the defense in the sense that they played an almost perfect game, and then but it's too much to ask of them. So in my mind, like, when you got this kid showing you that he could put the ball out there and he could put the ball where he needs to, let him go. Just put it all out there. But stats wise, you had again. The running backs, Eckler and Kelly, they have 30. They rushed, I think, 17 or 18 times apiece, and they had over 300 yards. So, I'm sorry, that's for the whole season I was pulling up. So basically, they have over 300 yards rushing on the season between the two of them so far. So they're averaging about 150 yards rushing per game, the Chargers are right now, which is looking real good on the ground. They got a lot of balance. Again, there wasn't too many mistakes. The sack that Herbert took, he knows that he should have thrown that away. That was a bad sack that he took. but he could have made it worse by trying to do something stupid. I almost look at those rookie mistakes as like, are they catastrophic? And it's like the interception, was it catastrophic? No. I mean, it was all the way down in the other team's, red zone. Is the sack catastrophic? No, they ended up getting a first down after that. And so, overall, I give Herbert soaring grades on his first, game out there, just based on what he was asked to do, how he performed. The moment was not too big for him. And to start your career off against the Super Bowl champs and almost win, of course, you'd love to have that win for the storybook ending. But, man, the first touchdown ever scored by a Charger in their new stadium was Herbert running it in for a touchdown. And theoretically, that's going to be his home for years to come. And so that was a pretty great opening chapter for the Chargers there, other than the fact that they just couldn't pull it out in the end. But I think they learned a lot there. And I'm hoping that the coaching staff learned that they cannot just expect their defense to be perfect every game and then just have the offense just do enough to win. They got weapons. They need to start to use those weapons and really start to get down the field in the passing game, in my mind.
Yeah, man, I agree. I think this week you're going to see a lot with Carolina. I think the Chargers, we'll get to it later, but they're in a good spot, Brian. I would be super excited as a Charger fan if I were you with this team. It's young. They're balanced. They're not as deep as I would have liked on the defensive side, but you guys got a good little core, man. I'm thinking playoffs for the Chargers this year for sure.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, let's hope that actually happens. And I'll tell you, dude, the last note that I'll make on this Chargers team right now is that when I think about great drafts that the Chargers have had over the years, obviously you could make the argument that the greatest ever was the LT and Drew Brees draft, where they got LT in the first round. I think it was 2001, turned around and got Drew Brees in the second round, two future Hall of Famers, obviously. This draft, they got Herbert. They got Joshua Kelly out of UCLA, who has proven so far this season to be the real deal. Him and Eckler are the 1-2 punch of a really elusive back and then a power back that a lot of teams would be drooling over going into any season with that type of a ground attack. And he's proven to be that so far. Then you've got Murray, the linebacker, who I believe leads the team in total tackles right now. So he's off to a great start. So that's three guys right there. Reed, the wide receiver that they drafted, has been returning kicks for them and has been doing pretty good with that. And so, and a couple of the other rookies have contributed as well. And so when you look at that draft class, I mean, it's too early to tell, obviously. But when you get even one guy out of your draft class who ends up being like a starter and ends up putting in serious time and stuff like that, that's a pretty good draft. These guys right now, this draft class is looking incredible for the Chargers. Some of them have been pressed into service because of injuries early, but holy crap, this looks like it was a stellar draft for the Chargers.
Another one. Yep, absolutely.
Well, you mentioned me being excited about being a Chargers fan right now with the youth movement that they have going on there. How are you feeling as a Colts fan after this week 2 showing where the Colts pretty much dismantled the Vikings 28-11?
They did, and I think this is the defense that we are going to see all year. This was the team that came ready to play. I'm a little concerned with our depth at the wide receiver position with Paris Campbell going down. Jack Doyle is always on the injury report, so I think we need to get another weapon. You're going to have Pittman step up. T.Y. hasn't been playing very well. Mo Alley Cox played really well last week. But I think we need someone to step up, and I think someone that's going to step up this week is going to be that kid, Zach Pascal. So keep an eye on him. But, yeah, man, I'm excited. I'm not getting overly confident, but this was the team that I was expecting to come out against the Jaguars, and I think this team comes out and they just dismantle the Jets again. I think they're a 12-point favorite. Yep. They're going to be at home. Rivers is starting to gel, regardless of what you guys or what anyone thinks about Phillip Rivers' arm. It's not as strong as it was, but he's smart, man, and he uses those outlets. He throws for a high percentage, and he drove that offense last week.
If I'm not mistaken, he is in top 3. He might even be number 1 right now in terms of completion percentage in the NFL of starting quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
He comes out this week. His line for this week is 19 of 25 for 214 yards, 1 TD, 1 interception. Now, the interception that was thrown early, I think on the first drive, was to Mo Alley Cox, and that was 100% Cox's fault on that one. He caught the ball with his chest. It bounced right off of him. It gets picked off. That has nothing to do with Phillip Rivers. He put the ball exactly where he needed to. That should have been a catch. They were absolutely dissecting the Vikings defense at that point in time. And you know what I loved about that, though? And this is Phillip Rivers, dude. He didn't shy away from Mo Alley Cox for the rest of the game. The guy had 100 yards receiving on 5 catches over the course of the day. So Rivers is going to keep going back to you and give you a chance to redeem yourself. And that's what Mo Alley Cox did on Sunday, which I thought was great. And so that's what you get with Phillip Rivers. He's fearless, dude, and he's going to make the occasional mistake. I don't think you're going to see as many as you did last year. I think this week is more representative of what you're going to get. I like the fact that he threw the ball 25 times instead of 45 times in this game. It showed a lot more balance on the part of the Colts. That running back Taylor, their young kid there, looked really good. Marlon Mack obviously going down with an injury. They come back this week with a very balanced offensive attack where they have a great running attack, a great passing attack. They put 28 points on the board. And as you said, the defense, to me, this was the defense I was hearing about when people were talking about how good the Colts defense was going to be this year. This was the defense I was looking for. They were all over the Vikings, all over them this entire game. And so if this is what we can expect from this team, they are a super balanced and just a really strong looking team. I feel like to me, they felt like a complete team watching this game.
For sure. And the Vikings, listen, they're not as strong as they were last year, but they still have some weapons. You got Cousins, you got Thielen, and the running back, I'm drawing a blank, but they can still play. Yeah, Dalvin Cook. Like, these guys are legit NFL players, and the Colts just shut them down. They had
175 total yards.
Right. I think you and I could probably get 175 total yards.
I might be able to get 5. But I have no doubt you could put up 170 on it for sure.
But no, man, like this, I'm more excited about this Colts defense that I saw this past week than I am the offense. The offense played okay. He threw 1 touchdown. We took too many field goals. I think Blankenship 4 for 4. He hit all 4 of his field goal attempts, but we can't be getting field goals when we're in those red zones, when we're in the 40. You got to score touchdowns. If you're going to score touchdowns, you're going to make the playoffs. If you're going to score consistently in the playoffs and not take those field goals, you got a shot. But if you play those teams against the Chiefs, as you know, like you take those field goals, you're going to get beat. You're going to get beat against the Ravens. You're going to get beat against the Steelers. Like, you've got to figure a way to score touchdowns. And that's what I'm going to look for this week. I think Phillip Rivers could potentially go off this week because, again, they won, but he threw 1 touchdown, 1 pick. He threw for 200 yards. It wasn't a great game. So I think he's going to come out this week, and he's just going to fire the ball all over the field.
Well, I think both the Chargers and the Colts this week have an opportunity to really put the pedal to the metal when it comes to their offenses. The Chargers are going up against the Carolina Panthers, who are not the formidable Carolina Panthers teams of the past. This is a team that, and this kind of scares me a little bit because a lot of times the Chargers will play down to their competition when they're playing a team that they should beat. And that scares me a little bit. We saw that in the first week with the Bengals, whereas they play up a lot of times to the teams that they really are not supposed to have a chance of beating. And so on paper, this looks like a week where Herbert knew he was going to start for pretty much this entire week. Word on the street is he's been coming in early and getting prepared. He obviously does not lack for confidence. The team, obviously, his wide receivers and running backs certainly were impressed with his first week's outing. With a full week of preparation as the starter, my thought is that they should come out here and really put it on the Carolina Panthers early. And I would say the same thing for Indianapolis. Like you said, I expect Rivers to have a big week. On paper, this looks like a matchup where they should just come out and absolutely destroy the Jets. And so do those games scare you a little bit? Because as a Chargers fan, they scare the hell out of me, games that my team is supposed to win.
Oh, man. You know what? They would have if they had Jacoby at quarterback. I think when you have these non-proven quarterbacks who are game managers, your Tyrod Taylors, your Jacoby Brissetts, that would scare the hell out of me. But I'm not scared with Phillip Rivers against the Jets. I think he handles the Jets. I think there's no chance they lose this game. I'm sure they're going to get beat, but I don't think they're going to lose this game. And with the Chargers, you got Hebert coming off a high. He's got confidence. I think his team is confident around him. Like when you see these guys going after balls, maybe they don't necessarily go after those balls for somebody that, I don't know, that they don't necessarily like at quarterback, but they were going all over the field for him. And that's what I noticed too, man. So these guys love playing. They love playing with this kid, and it shows on the field. So I think Hebert's going to have a monster game too. Like if he just keeps those stupid rookie plays down, he's going to tear him up, man. Like I really think they're going to have great weeks as quarterbacks this weekend.
I am fascinated to see whether or not this kid makes another big rookie mistake like he did last week. Like if he can go out and play a game where he limits the big mistake, I'm going to be super impressed with him, because I was super impressed with him last week, but he did have a couple of the sack and of course the interception. Those were two, I think, big mistakes that you don't want to be making those types of mistakes in a game against a team, especially a close game or a team that you know can come back on you like that. So very interested to see how he follows up that effort with this one, because now he set a high expectation. You mentioned the players around him looking like they want to play for him. I was a little bit worried about that because I know the players love Tyrod Taylor. And if you watch the Hard Knock series, it's hard not to love Tyrod Taylor. Like he works hard. He was in there before dawn every morning, working out, watching film. He's clearly a leader in the clubhouse. It's awful that he loses, his at least one start because of a medical situation that had, in no way, shape, or form was his fault at all. And so I was a little worried that the guys might be flat with Herbert trotting out there. It was pretty clear right away that they saw what he could do, and they responded to that. And what I noticed just in terms of they're obviously very different quarterbacks, Taylor and Herbert. But with Taylor, I found that there was a majority of plays where the receivers were making adjustments to catch balls that were not well thrown. In Herbert's game, there was a couple of times where I thought the receivers saved him from maybe an incompletion. I didn't think, there was interception. There was one where Keenan Allen made a catch that could have maybe been an interception there. But I thought for the most part where he was putting the ball took a lot of pressure off of his receivers, that they didn't have to make those adjustments. They could catch in stride. They could catch in open space and make a move. And that's the kind of stuff that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but shows up, I guess it shows up in the stat sheet in terms of total yards, but that's the kind of thing that's sort of an intangible where guys are going to be able to get lots of yards after the catch. And as much as I don't want to invoke the name Tom Brady, he is a guy who often puts the ball in places where a lot can be done after the catch. And that's where the Patriots would get a lot of their yardage, is after the catch. And so with the backs that the Chargers have and the receivers that they have, yards after catch, there's a lot of potential there if the ball is in the right place.
Yeah, absolutely. You nailed it. I think when you're talking about a wide receiver, and wide receivers in general are the biggest prima donnas on the team. They are. But if you're hitting them in stride and you're giving them an opportunity to do what they like to do best, which is to show off their athletic ability, they will perform. They are going to perform for you. And that's what Herbert did. That's what Keenan Allen did. Like, again, this team is going to be tough down the stretch, Brian. I'm excited. I think when they go into Carolina this week, they have no McCaffrey. They've got no Cam Newton, obviously. It's Bridgewater. God, if the Charger defense plays like they did against the Chiefs, they could hurt Bridgewater. Like, they just pounded Mahomes, and he's another tier above Bridgewater. But I'm excited, man. I want to watch that game just because I was so impressed with your team. I'm excited. I liked Herbert a lot. I'm a big fan.
Well, let me ask you this then, going back to the Colts, because clearly I think we're both predicting that our teams should win this week. We should see a Chargers win if all goes according to plan. Certainly looking at the teams on paper, the Colts should have no problem with the Jets, and, the Chargers have a very good chance to beat Carolina. And so, but to go back to what you said earlier, the depth or lack of depth right now at the wide receiver position for the Indianapolis Colts, looking around the league, you've got trade rumors for Odell. You've got teams that could potentially have receivers that might be a good trade candidate for the Indianapolis Colts. Is there anyone that you realistically think that they could or would like to see them bring in to bolster the depth? Would you be looking for a young guy? Would you be looking for a crafty veteran to come in? Like, who do you think is even a remote possibility for them to try and go after at this point in the season?
So listen, I have not heard any of these rumors. So I do like Odell Beckham. I don't think he's a good fit for the Colts My pick, the guy I would pick right now, and I'm going to hear a lot of shit for this. You're probably not going to like it. Antonio Brown.
Really?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because you have a veteran-led locker room with Phillip Rivers. Tom Brady loved Antonio Brown. They connected. Antonio Brown can still play. Off the field, he's got some crazy-ass issues, and I get it. But if Rivers has a chat with him, and they kind of sit him down and are like, look, this is what we do. This is how we do it. He serves a suspension. He can help a team. And I don't understand why you wouldn't bring in a guy like him to bolster your lineup. He makes you an immediate Super Bowl contender.
I definitely agree with you from a talent standpoint, right? Here's my concerns about that. And again, I'm less of an expert on the Colts than you are for sure around that kind of stuff. But number one, these two things concern me about Antonio Brown. Although he did function in the Steelers offense, but then there was friction around that. Is number one, I don't think the Colts offense, at least from a strategy standpoint, is pass first. So you got a guy who's going to demand the ball, who's going to come in, right? And he's going to be upset if he's not getting the ball on a regular basis. I worry about that, right? I worry about him starting to try to dictate the ratio on offense. The other thing I worry about, obviously, are the character issues coming in, right? Because you do have a veteran-led team. You have a team. I don't know, is Frank Reich, is he going to be able to control the temperature of that team? If they end up having locker room issues, is he that? Does he? And I don't know this because I haven't. What is this? His second or third year coaching the Colts now? Like, does he command that level of respect that if things don't go the way, if Antonio doesn't gel and they've got to manage some friction, is Frank Reich the guy to be able to do that? I don't know, and so I would worry about that. Those would be my worries. I mean, there's no doubt from a talent standpoint and from an ability standpoint. And from a quarterback standpoint and Rivers' ability to get him the ball, there could be fireworks there, right? But to me, it's a high risk, high reward sort of situation.
Very high risk. And listen, I agree with everything you said. But when you look at our team on paper right now, our wide receivers are not performing. T.Y. is not T.Y. Doyle hasn't played. Paris Campbell's probably out for the year. Pittman is a rookie. You give me one rookie wide receiver that's ever come in and made an impact his first or second year. Haven't seen one. Mo Alley, we need a weapon. We need a weapon. We don't really need depth. We need a go-to killer on that field. And that's what Antonio Brown is. If they can just handle his shit off the field, I think it's a no-brainer. That's what happened with New England. Tom Brady loved playing with him. Yeah. I don't think they had any issues with Belichick. I think it was his off-field related issues the Patriots didn't want to deal with. And I forgot what it was, but it came out right after they signed him. Some shit came out, and I think it came out later that it was all speculative. And now I think he's got a 4-game suspension. Someone's going to pick him up. And there's character issues all over the NFL. Let's just be honest. His is just a little bit more known. So I think you take a runner at him, and I don't think there's not – it's a no-lose situation. You sign him for the league minimum. You see if he performs. And you have a legit one wide receiver right now.
You know the name that I keep going back to, and this is my I'll put my crazy hat on for a second, but a guy that I would absolutely love to see them trade for and bring to the Colts to play with Phillip Rivers, Larry Fitzgerald. I would 100%. Dude. No, I don't. Do I think that? Yeah, I don't think it'll happen because I think he's a lifer, with them. But I just see he's not. I don't think he's being utilized a ton right now, or at least thus far this season in that Cardinals offense. He's a guy who I just would love to see him play with Rivers and see what they can do because he's so reliable. What I want them to get, because what it seems to me that they're missing so far this year is a Mr. Reliable. Who is their Mr. Reliable? Like on the Chargers, you can throw the ball to Keenan Allen on 3rd and 7, and he's going to catch that ball, and he's going to move the chains. Who is going to be the Colts' Mr. Reliable? And so far, I haven't seen a Mr. Reliable. No. I've seen some guys who have made some great plays. I've seen some guys who have a ton of ability. But who's going to be the guy that when you have to get a first down, Rivers is going to be able to get the ball to that person. I mean, he's had Antonio Gates, he's had Keenan Allen, he's had Vincent Jackson, he's had guys over the course of his career that were going to be that guy who is, if you need a catch made right now, I'm your guy. Get me the ball. I will catch the ball.
So it's funny that you said Antonio Gates. I was just going to ask you, do you think he's reached out to him?
The thing is, dude, it's funny you mentioned this because I was actually researching that and I couldn't find any articles that said that Antonio Gates was like interviewed recently and said that he's still ready to go and he's still waiting for a call. I always think that there is a conversation to be had there. I always think that there's potential for Antonio to come back because Antonio, especially with the tight end injury that the Colts are dealing with right now, the thing about Antonio is watching him in that last year that he played with the Chargers, he has lost not 1 but 2 or 3 steps.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. He can lumber out 5 to 7 yards, and he still has that ability to put his body in front of you and make it possible for you to come over and take that ball away from him. So he's probably running, a 6.5 40 at this point in time, but he can still lumber out there and catch a ball, and it's almost impossible to come over his back. And so do I feel like he could still be productive in a Phillip Rivers-led offense? Absolutely. But that is me being completely biased because I watched him do it, for so many years. But yeah, I mean, to me, if there's an opportunity to do that and bring him in for a little bit of money and give him a chance, who knows? I guess they probably have likely had a conversation at this point, and the fact that you haven't heard his name mentioned at all, to me, tells me either that he's not interested or he's not anywhere near game shape to be able to come out and sort of do that. So I don't know.
It'll be interesting to see down the road for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But very interesting to see if the Colts try to add some receiver depth and who they might bring in. That's going to be real interesting to watch. And then right now, I mean, to flip that coin, there's a real opportunity here for all of the receiving core on the Indianapolis Colts to become that Mr. Reliable for Phillip Rivers. Who's going to be that guy who is going to step up now and have his confidence so that when he has to make that throw, he's looking to you to make that catch. I think that spot on the team is still open, and I think anybody right now can step up into it. I think Mo Alley Cox, despite that early miscue, really proved himself this week to be a guy that could be very productive in that offense.
Well, listen, I agree, but if you're going to rely on Mo Alley Cox to drive your offense, we're in trouble.
I'm not saying we should rely on him. I'm just saying that he looked pretty darn good the other day outside of that one miscue there. And the problem there is, like, he's got to catch with his hands, man. He can't let that ball get into his body like that.
The chest catchers can't. Yep. Yeah, I got you.
That's what separates guys who want to be a tight end but are really an offensive lineman in disguise. And when you can't make those, you got no hands, so you're not allowed. And I say that because that was my story in high school. I always dreamed of being a tight end, but number one, didn't have the speed. Number two, didn't have the hands for it. So there you go. So I'm excited to see what happens this week. That was a great bounce back week for the Colts last week. Huge debut for Justin Herbert. Lots of good things hopefully to come for him. I do hope that Tyrod recovers. And if it's soon enough for him to get back in the mix and back in the equation, I'd rather have him lose his job because of performance than because of an injury. But I think, as you said it, man, if he's out for more than a couple of weeks, I don't think there is coming back in this situation. And knowing that they drafted Herbert and they paid him, they're going to pay him, continue to pay him a lot of money. Like, they drafted the future. So it's not like Tyrod had this job, forever at this point. Everybody knew that this is sort of a transition situation for the Chargers. But it just made that team a heck of a lot more interesting to follow this season. And we'll see how that goes. Now, usually this is the part where we talk about fantasy football. But since I once again lost in fantasy football this past week, and I'm now 0-2. I don't even want to talk about it.
I don't even want to talk either. I listen to me. I was up by 29 points, and Kamara scored 30, and I lost by 0.8 points. I had your performance in week 1. I don't want to talk about it. I almost threw my computer out the window. Yeah.
The one thing I will talk about, though, right before we wrap up, is the injuries that continue to decimate the league. Obviously, Saquon went down. I just, as we were sitting here recording, got the notification on my phone that Melvin Ingram, the Chargers defensive end, is going on the IR. And so that's not looking good. It didn't get into the specifics about it, but I knew he had gotten hurt the other day. and he's not going to be playing. So the Chargers already dealing with 3 or 4 major cornerstone player injuries this year, which is pretty much par for the course for the Chargers. And that's not even counting the Tyrod Taylor situation. To me, they just seem to be cursed in that way. But we're seeing around the league, like, guys going down, which, of course, when we talk about fantasy football, I mean, these are guys that people drafted first in their fantasy football league too. So it's been, I guess the question that comes to my mind around the injury stuff is, I'm not so sure that this is because we had no preseason games. I think a lot of the time this happens during the preseason games. We're just used to it happening during camp and during preseason and not in weeks 1 and 2 of the football season. Like every year, there are guys that go down in preseason games, major players that end up being on the IR for the rest of the season. We're just used to that stuff kind of being done by the time the season starts. And so I feel like for the first 4 weeks of the season, we're still in the preseason, and we're going to see more players go down with injuries as this season starts. And some of it, sure, is because maybe they didn't have enough time for conditioning. But these guys are NFL athletes at this point. Like, if they're not coming into camp ready and they haven't been taking care of their body, like, I don't buy into that it was the lack of preseason games. I just think that this happens early in every season. It just usually happens in preseason.
Agreed. Couldn't have said it better.
Well, there you go. I think that that about covers it for this week's recap of the Week 2 NFL action. Obviously, we're going to be jumping into Week 3's games on Sunday tomorrow, and we'll be back again next week to recap the Chargers and the Colts. So until next time, for Mr. Brian Riley, this is Brian Latendry signing off. Enjoy the games.